Hello squad, we're rolling on to chapter 11, and chapter 11's title is Today is the Day. So, let's see what happens. The day, when it dawned, was just that little bit too bright. On the opposite side of the valley, the trees and houses and haystacks stood out clearly against the background in that three-dimensional way that means rain was later. Farmer Hoggett came out and sniffed the air and looked around. Then he went inside again to fetch his waterproof clothing. Fly knew the moment that she set eyes on the boss that this was the day. Dogs have lived so long with humans that they know what's going to happen, sometimes even before their owners do. She woke Babe. "Today," she said. "Today what, Mum?" said Babe sleepily. "Today is the day of the Grand Challenge Sheepdog Trials," said Fly proudly, "which you, dear," she added in a confident voice, "are going to win." With a bit of luck, she thought, and tenderly she licked the end of his snout. She looked critically at the rest of him, anxious as any mum that her child should be well turned out if it is to appear in public. "Oh, Babe," she said, "your coat's in an awful mess. What have you been doing with yourself? You look just as though you've been wallowing in the duck pond." "Yes." "You mean you have?" "Yes, Mum." Fly was on the point of saying that puppies don't do such things when she remembered that he was, after all, a pig. "Well, I don't know about large white," she said. "You've certainly grown enormous, but it's anyone's guess what colour you are under all of that muck. Whatever is to be done with you?" Immediately, her question was answered. "Come, pig," said Hoggett's voice from the yard, and when they came out of the stables, there stood the farmer with a hose pipe and scrubbing brush and pails of soapy water. Half an hour later, when a beautifully clean, shining Babe stood happily dripping whilst Hoggett brushed out the tassel of his tight-curled tail that looked like candy floss, Mrs. Hoggett stuck her head out of the kitchen window. "Breakfast's ready," she called. "But what in the world be's doing with that thick pig? Taking him to a pig show or summat? I thought you was going to drive up and watch trials today. Anybody think you're going to enter him? The way you've gone and done him up. Only he wouldn't be a sheepdog, he'd be a sheep pig, wouldn't he? Whoever heard of such a thing? I must be daft, though. It is you that's daft, really, carrying him about in that poor old Land Rover the size he is now. The bottom will fall out. I shouldn't wonder you ain't surely going to drive all that way with him in the back just so you can watch." "No," said Farmer Hoggett. Mrs. Hoggett considered this answer for a moment with her mouth open, while raising and lowering her eyebrows, shaking her head, and drumming on the windowsill with her fingertips. Then she closed her mouth, and then she closed the window. After breakfast, she came out to see them off. Fly was sitting in the passenger seat, and Babe was comfortable in a thick bed of clean straw in the back, of which he now took up the whole space. Mrs. Hoggett walked round the Land Rover giving out farewell pats. "Good boy," she said to Babe, "and good girl," to Fly, and to Hoggett, "Goodbye, and have you got your sandwiches and your thermos and coffee and your raincoat? It looks as though it might rain later, though I thought I felt a spot of rain just now, though I suppose it might be different where you're going, seeing as it's 100 miles away. That reminds me, have you got enough petrol? Or if not enough, have you got enough money to get some if you don't? Do you see what I mean? Drive carefully. See you later." 2:00. said Hoggart, and before his wife had time to say anything, added, Aunt Dolly, live, and put the Land Rover into gear and drove away. When Mrs. Hoggart switched the television on at 2:00, the first thing in the picture that she noticed was that it was raining hard. She dashed outside to fetch her washing in, saw that the sun was shining, remembered it wasn't washing day anyway, and came back to find the cameras showing the layout of the course. First, there was a shot of a huge pillar of stone, the height of a man, standing upright in the ground. Here, said the voice of the commentator, is where each handler will stand, and from here each dog will start his outrun. He can go left or right to get into position behind his sheep. Today each dog will have 10 sheep to work. They will be grouped near that distant post called the holding post. All the time the cameras followed his explanations. And then he must fetch his sheep through the fetch gates all the way back to the handler's post and round it. Then the dog drives the sheep away, to the left as we look at it, through the drive-away gates, turns them right again and straight across the line of his fetch, through the cross-drive gates and right again to the shedding ring. And when he's shed his sheep and collected them again, then finally he must pen them here. There's a bit of a diagram of the route. Oh, mouthy old thing that commentator is, said Mrs. Hoggart, turning the sound off. Some folk never know how to hold their tongues, keeping on and on and on about them silly gates. Why don't he show us a picture of the spectators? Might catch a glimpse of Hoggart and fly, you never knows. Oh, though not the pig, I hopes. He's surely not daft enough to walk about with the pig. Can't see why he wanted to take 'em all that way just to lie in the back of the Land Rover anyway. He'd have done better leave it here and let it sit and watch it on the telly in comfort, which is more than some of us have got time for. I've got work to do. And she stumped off into the kitchen, shaking her head madly. On the silent screen, the first handler walked out and took up his position beside the great sarsen stone, his dog standing by him, tense and eager in the pouring rain. And that's the end of chapter 11. Gosh, Mrs. Hoggart, she's just not got a clue, has she? Well, we are really getting close to the end of the story now. We've read this much and we've only got that much left to go, and it starts with chapter 12, so I'll see you then.